Hi, and welcome to Publishing Power. My name is JoEllen, and I am here today with Hayley Milliman of ProWritingAid. Hey, Hayley.
Hello, how are you?
I am great. Let me just tell you a little bit, folks, about ProWritingAid. If you're not familiar with them, which I'm 95% sure you are, I want you to know that they are a fantastic editing platform and style editor. They're considered a grammar guru, and they basically mentor you all in one package online. So they've got world-class grammar and style checking, and you can use this platform, which is a plugin, an extension, and a tool online to do your basic copy editing. And it's one of the professional tools we use here at First Editing when we're doing your work. So the more tools you have in your bag, the better off your writing is. And that's why we are cooperating and partnering with ProWritingAid to bring you more information about how to improve your writing. And Hayley is here. She is the content lead for ProWritingAid, and she's going to talk to us today about clarity. So this is very exciting. It's, clarity in life is something we all desire, but clarity, the world feels a little, I don't know what's clear right now. So
exactly.
I'm just going to ask you straight off, tell us why clarity is the ultimate goal for every writer. I like to just hit it running here.
Yeah, let's dive in. So, it's funny because I think, a lot of times as writers, we get really caught up, especially when we're doing the first draft of our manuscript and like our character development and our setting and our plot, making sure we hit all of these different story beats, which yes, of course, those are very, very important. And I'm not trying to suggest that they're not, but if our writing isn't clear, then those things won't shine. So if we don't have clear writing, clear sentences, clear sentence structures, then you can have the best and most fascinating character in the world, but no one will really know about it if your writing isn't clear. So I always think about clarity as kind of the ultimate tool for getting those fun things across, right? You want people to engage with this amazing world you've built. If you're writing nonfiction, you want people to understand your ideas and to engage with those. And if you don't have clarity, it's just going to be kind of hidden in language. And that's where sentence structure can kind of work against us, where if we're not aiming for our sentences to be clear and constructed with our reader in mind, then those great ideas that we've spent hours and hours and weeks planning and plotting and building and putting onto the page just won't shine. So I think that it's typically something that, people start to think about in the editing phase, but I really think that every writer should always be thinking about clarity, because if they're not, again, those ideas just are not going to shine.
Right. And that's so important. We can do only so much once you get to the point of editing, and that's kind of what we have there. So that's what I love about ProWritingAid's tool that allows them to kind of do this. So it really is about having that forethought of planning and structuring and thinking about who wants to read what you have to say, and are you able to convey it in a way that is clear. So if we're going to define it, what is clarity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you kind of touched on it a little bit just there, where you were talking about like having the reader in mind. And I think that that's one of the key pieces when you're thinking about what clarity means, because it first of all means something different for every writer. So I'm writing something different than what you are. So clarity for me is going to mean something different than it would mean for you, because we have different audiences, right? Every book has its own set of audiences, its own audience. And so what clarity means for that book is going to be very different depending on what you're writing and who you're writing for. Let me give a little bit of an example of that. So say I'm writing a science fiction novel. The terms that I'll use and the terms that will be clear for my writers are very different than if you're writing a children's book, right? Or if you're writing young adult fantasy or something like that. Like, what is clear for your different audience depends on what you're writing and who you're writing for. So kind of first and foremost, clarity is audience focused, right? It should always be considered with your audience in mind, who you're writing for. It changes, again, as I said, for every writer. So clarity for me is different than clarity for you, is different than clarity for all the listeners here. And your kind of goal for clarity is different as well. But at kind of like the micro level, what I'm really talking about is how your sentences are constructed, and if they're constructed with your reader, with your audience in mind. And you basically want to set up your sentences in a way so that those ideas that we were talking about before can shine. And that, again, your sentence is kind of the tool, the vehicle for those ideas to shine, rather than this kind of like muddled path that readers are having having to traverse in order to understand what you're trying to say. So typically, I'm talking about sentence construction, I'm talking about readability, I'm talking about word choice, all of that kind of falls under the umbrella of clarity. What I'm not talking about is how simple your ideas are. So a lot of times when people get kind of nervous and they think like, oh, well, I don't want to dumb my manuscript down, right? Or like, I don't want to make this too easy, but that's not what it is. And it's like, it's more about, again, constructing with your reader in mind. And again, every audience is going to have a different kind of set of what's clear for them and a different understanding and a different baseline that they're approaching with. So yeah, so it's not dumbing down your ideas at all. And it's also not taking personality out of writing. I think that's another thing that people tend to worry about. They hear, you know, oh, and they worry when they're using a tool like ProWritingAid, or even just like throughout the editing process. I feel like writers often worry, oh, is this going to take away my voice? Is it going to take, yeah, exactly. Like it's not at all. Like the point is to let those ideas shine more, not to make something much more simple and again, like soulless almost. And that's why one of the things that I said about clarity is word choice, right? So it doesn't always mean choosing the simplest word or the most basic word. A lot of times clarity can mean choosing a word that gets your point across more. So kind of one of the things I often talk about is specifically when we're using ProWritingAid is using specific adjectives, right? So instead of just saying she was pretty, you know, like describe that more. You know, clarity doesn't always mean conciseness. It doesn't always mean cutting things out. And it does mean adding more specificity to make your meaning clear, right? So setting up your sentences in a way that they're easy to understand for your audience. And then also being as specific as you can, so that if you think about a book is kind of like a movie that a reader can play in their mind, you want them to have the clearest and most accurate picture. And that comes down to like word choice and making sure that you're describing what you are talking about in a way that makes sense.
Right. And that is your sentence structure, to be honest. And that's where the editing can help, but it really is before that. That's what I love about the plugin with ProWritingAid is when I'm sitting there, it shows me again and again, again, my little crutch words that I get stuck on, or my descriptions that I use again and again and again. And at one point I'm like, okay, I know I have a problem with this word and this week. And it's in my email. It's in my, it's in my documents. It's on my website. It's whatever. And I'm like, and you know, that's what is amazing is it's there for you wherever you're writing. It's in my phone. But I've really started to see like, okay, so I'm becoming a better writer myself.
Yeah.
And so that's the good thing about having that. And I do find that my words are clearer because it's giving me, it's not just stopping saying, oh, this is repetitive. It's saying, you know, would you rather say one of these 3-4 words? And that really helps to just shake it up a bit, maybe.
Totally.
And, you know, it's not my words, it's a word I would use, but it's very good. So I can see that that is really, really important. Is it the same for every writer, do you think, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, not at all. And so I think I'm glad that you tied it into the ProWritingAid reports, because we have over 20 and they cover everything from like your basic grammar, you know, like have you missed a period here or misspelled a word? And then to what you were talking about, like repeats and echoes and that type of thing. And what's really amazing about the software is that it's personalized for everyone, right? So you and I writing 2 different documents in there are going to get different suggestions, which is so important. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about in terms of really differentiating. Like clarity is different for every writer. And we have a number of kind of features built into ProWritingAid to make that happen. So one, first of all, the reports are obviously going to give different suggestions because we have 2 different documents or we're editing 2 different things. So first of all, the suggestions, the AI that we use to power the tool, in many cases can kind of understand context and give suggestions based on that. We can also change our writing style within ProWritingAid. So different on like a macro level, different document styles will have different things that make sense. So for instance, in business writing or in academic writing, passive voice is much more common. One of the reasons for that is that in academic writing, oftentimes you don't know kind of who's responsible for something, or there might be just like typically more common. So our checker in ProWritingAid reduces the number of passive voice flags if you set your writing style to business or academic, because again, it should be different, right? The goal of clarity is different for who you are. You can also think that like an academic audience probably is open to a more complicated word choice or a higher readability score, because who's reading that is totally different than who's reading, again, a YA fantasy novel or kind of mass market fiction or something like that, where you're writing for broad understanding in mind. So yeah, it should totally be different. And the goal of clarity is to be audience focused. So that's where you need to start. It's like, who is my audience? And again, every single author will have a slightly different audience, right? Every single author will have different people they're targeting. And again, what's clear to them is going to be different than what's clear to someone else.
Exactly. So we know we're using this tool. What kind of techniques are we achieving? Or how do we achieve this clarity right now? I mean, obviously plug in the plugin, but
yeah,
give us some basic.
Yeah, I always. Yeah, yeah.
Wait, the button.
Things.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely ProWritingAid can help you with clarity. I always tell people as well, though, that this is something that should be your goal, even if you're not using our tool. And it starts at the sentence level. So if you think about, I kind of mentioned this before, but if you think about a book as like a movie, right, that somebody's just reading, each sentence actually is kind of like a mini movie in itself. So if I said, my dog, if you guys are watching this on video, you'll see my dog, but if you're listening to the podcast, my dog just stood up. So if I said, Hayley's dog stands up, those of you who are listening to this on the podcast are going to get a picture, right? You're going to get a picture in your mind of a dog standing up. Now, that sentence isn't super clear because I haven't described my dog, and he actually is kind of unique looking. So if I said, Hayley's gray and white Australian cattle dog stands up, people will get a more clear picture. And so that's to say, basically, clarity has to start at that micro level, sentence by sentence. So when you're looking at clarity, you're looking at each individual sentence to ask, first of all, are the words that I've chosen for that sentence as specific and clear as they can be, or as they need to be? And they don't always need to be as detailed as what I just said, but are they as detailed as they need to be? And then second, is the sentence constructed in a way that has the reader's understanding in mind? So things I'm asking at that point are, is the sentence too long? Is it too wordy? Is the readability too high? Does it have a lot of clauses that are kind of connected together that might make a confusing picture for my reader? So yeah, so clarity has to start at kind of that sentence level. And if you think about it, a sentence is where your reader plays that kind of first movie, like we just talked about, Hayley's dog stands up, you play a little mini movie. And so if your sentences are not clear, then your paragraphs won't be clear, and then your chapters won't be clear. So on the flip side of that, if you have a clear sentence, then in multiple clear sentences, you'll get a clear paragraph and you'll get kind of a clear story. So again, whether you're using ProWritingAid or not, you should really start to focus sentence by sentence, because that's where the biggest changes will be to make your writing more clear.
Exactly. So it all starts from your self-editing at the very beginning, which of course we love to talk about here because it makes everybody's writing better and it makes our editing job easier. So easier, I wouldn't say easier, but it lets us focus on a higher level. And that's really, really important, because why spend your money for the basics that you can learn and master yourself? So I really appreciate this. Clarity is an ultimate goal of every writer. And I really hope that people take a look at your sentences, everything you're doing day in and day out. It's important you're looking at that style and making sure that you're learning how to convey yourself clearly and thinking about who you're talking to and why. So again, thank you for joining us today, Hayley. It was really fantastic. We'll be talking about this more on our upcoming series here with Hayley. And of course, you can also learn more about self-editing over at ProWritingAid. They've got a new upcoming monthly webinar with yours truly called the Self-Editing School. And so we look forward to doing a lot more work here and helping everyone get to where they need to be with their writing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye-bye.